On a cold Welsh afternoon, a group of schoolchildren looked toward the edge of their playground and saw something that did not belong there. A metallic shape rose above the field, and the question it left behind still hangs over Broadhaven. Broadhaven sits on the Pembrokeshire coast, where wind, sea, and open land meet in a quiet corner of Wales. In a place this ordinary, even a brief disturbance in the sky can feel impossible to forget. The case belongs to the winter of 1977, when reports from children, teachers, and later investigators began to gather around one strange afternoon. What started as a playground sighting soon spread far beyond the school gates. At first, the description was simple: a silver object, low and silent, seen near the school grounds. But the calm way the children described it made the account harder to dismiss than a passing joke or dare. Witnesses later said the object seemed to settle on the ground near a nearby field, close enough to be seen clearly, but strange enough to resist easy description. Its shape was reported as round, smooth, and unlike any aircraft the children knew. That detail matters because the story was not told as a fantasy after the fact. It emerged from a cluster of children who appeared to be describing the same thing from the same place at roughly the same time. In cases like this, the first question is always whether the memory grew larger with each retelling. Yet the Broadhaven reports were persistent, and they drew attention because the children kept returning to the same basic shape and behavior. The object was said to move without the roar of an engine, and that silence is part of what made the sighting so unsettling. In a rural place where tractors, planes, and weather are familiar, silence can feel like a signal. Soon the story widened beyond one child's impression. Teachers, parents, and local residents became part of a growing trail of testimony, each adding a slightly different angle to the same strange afternoon. What makes Broadhaven endure is not just that something was seen, but that the sightings seemed to cluster around the school itself. The location turned an isolated report into a shared mystery rooted in an everyday place. Investigators who later looked into the case found a pattern of repeated claims from young witnesses, and that pattern became the heart of the debate. Were they describing a real encounter or shaping one another's memories under pressure? The strongest believers point to the consistency of the core description. A disc-like craft, low altitude, close range, and an impression of intelligent control. Those elements are what keep the case in circulation decades later. Another detail often remembered is the sense of scale. The object was not described as a distant star or a vague light, but as something substantial enough to occupy space, cast presence, and alter the mood of the moment. That physicality matters because it pushes the case beyond a simple skywatching mistake. A solid object near the ground invites different questions than a light high above the clouds. There were also later reports of unusual marks or impressions in the area, though the surviving record is less tidy than the eyewitness memory. Even so, the possibility of a trace keeps investigators interested. For supporters, the case sits in a broader pattern seen in other schoolyard encounters. Children notice what adults overlook. Then the event becomes too specific to fit comfortably into rumor alone. That is part of its enduring force. Skeptics, however, note how quickly a dramatic story can spread among children in a close community. A shared expectation, a misread object, or a playful exaggeration can all harden into certainty over time. Weather and distance also matter in coastal Wales, where light can shift fast and ordinary objects can seem extraordinary for a few seconds. A low cloud bank, a reflective surface, or a distant aircraft can all confuse the eye. Yet that explanation does not fully erase the emotional weight of the testimony. The children did not describe a vague feeling. They described a thing they believed they saw, and they held to that memory. The case became better known when researchers and journalists revisited it, treating the school not as a curiosity, but as a genuine historical file. Once that happened, Broadhaven joined the small number of British encounters people still argue about seriously. The most compelling accounts remain the simplest ones: a quiet object, a close view, and a group of children who seemed startled rather than performative. That combination is exactly why the story refuses to settle. If the sightings were mistaken, what was seen so clearly by so many? And if something unusual really did pass over Broadhaven, why there? And why then? Part of the answer may lie in the ordinary pressures of memory, especially among children recalling an event that adults immediately wanted to understand. Another part may lie in how a real anomaly can be blurred by time without disappearing. That tension is what keeps Broadhaven alive in the record. It is not a polished legend, but a local event with rough edges, conflicting interpretations, and a stubborn centre that never quite goes away. Even now, the case invites a larger question about how many encounters begin in places that seem too small to matter. A schoolyard, a field, a glance upward, and suddenly the world feels larger than expected. That is why the Broadhaven story still resonates with people drawn to the unknown. It offers no neat ending, only the uneasy sense that something brief and intelligent may have crossed the Welsh sky. The conventional readings remain possible. Mistaken identification, contagious excitement, and memory shaped by retelling. But none of them fully captures the feeling that something was there, seen by ordinary children in an ordinary place. And that is the enduring mystery of Broadhaven School. A small Welsh community looked up, reported what it saw, and left behind a case that still asks whether the sky briefly opened onto something we have not yet explained. In the end, the story does not demand certainty so much as attention. Somewhere between testimony, memory, and the unknown, Broadhaven remains one of those rare cases that still feels unfinished. The children grew up, the school day ended, and the field went quiet again. Yet the question they left behind still rises with the weather over Wales. What exactly did they see? Broadhaven endures because it sits right on the edge between the explainable and the strange. That edge is where many of the best mysteries live, and this one has never quite stepped back from it. For some, it is a childhood misidentification that grew into legend. For others, it is a rare glimpse of something intelligent and unfamiliar, passing low over a small school in Wales.